Gordon believes that the true test of great chefs is not only what they can do in the best of circumstances, but what kind of magic they can create in the worst, which I really loved that sentence. Can you tell me something that you have created in the worst of situations? I'll start with you, Richard.
Well, again, just going back to Next Level Chef and sort of, being in the basement a lot, so much so that it's sometimes called the Blaisement, um, is, the fact of just making things happen because you have no choice. I alligator parmesan comes to mind from, last season where you're like, what? And, alligator kind of tastes like chicken. I got some breadcrumbs. I have no time. There's one pan. So I really love the magic of improv in all fields, but especially in cooking, where it doesn't really exist in restaurants. So for me, it is that basement is where sometimes you don't have to think so much; you just have to make it happen, and that usually releases, some good ideas or some fast ideas that doesn't happen in like the restaurant industry as much as we'd like it to.
Totally. Yeah, for me, I think I when I think back and you say you pose a question, something like, you've had to make the best out of a tough situation. I think back a lot of my most contentious times, arduous times were being in a Michelin-starred kitchen when I didn't think I had the chops to be there. And every day we'd go into service and I thought, I'm just gonna get pummeled, and I'd be on that line and calling out the orders. I was the viand or the meat cook, saucier, and every day was like going into battle, going into war. And you know we'd have to make family meal, right? And generally in family meal you have the scraps, and I remember challenging myself to set up my station as quick as possible so I can make the best, most nurturing, beautiful family meals for our team. And, it was then that I earned the respect of the kitchen because, you're given the scraps, you're given the trim, you're given everything that doesn't go on the celebrated menu. And I remember my mentor said, this is how I know. And what makes a good chef is when you're given the worst of ingredients and you can make something great out of that. And he said, that's how I judge my chefs, and how they're going to be great. And so when he said that to me, when I made an incredible family meal, I thought, like, that's super cool. I was able to set up my station, make something out of nothing. And for the chefs, powers that be to recognize that, like, there's no better feeling.
I love that. It's so good. And I feel like I'm now like inspired to go home and cook what's in my fridge because I go home and I'm like, oh, I only really have eggs and cream. What am I gonna do with this?
So much.
So much. Okay, I
So
have
much.
to just I wanted to
hit me and Richard up for some advice. I'm sure we can throw 10 dishes at you.
I was going to ask because I just recently moved to America. I'm not sure if you can tell that with my accent. And I find my roommates, they don't cook a lot. Do you find that is a common thread through America?
I think more and more people are now, cooking, but I do think that yes, there's a good portion of Americans that don't cook a lot at home, but they love watching food content
Yes.
and they also love going to restaurants. So I'm okay with that group.
I mean, I think for me, what I noticed in the food trends is like post-COVID world, like everyone got super comfortable Postmating or Uber eating or Grubhubbing, but having food show up at your door was like a new, like not a new luxury, but like people got super comfortable with just like the idea of food showing up at your door, and it's kind of just like stuck.
It's so easy here. You can get everything delivered.
That's
It's
the thing.
crazy.
Yeah.
And going back to Next Level Chef, I wanted to ask, because every day people are learning, like you're learning, I'm sure still. What have you learned from the contestants this season?
I mean, for me, there's always a number of contestants that maybe cook a cuisine that I'm not familiar with, or have life experiences that I haven't gone through, and it's really a constant, it's constant learning and constant collaboration. So I mean, that's the beauty of our world, is that you really can't run out of things to learn in the culinary world. You're always learning, and when you learn about a new cuisine, you're learning about a new culture, and when you're learning about someone's profession or ex profession, you're learning about life. So to me, it's a great thing about our show, and especially so because it's not just pro chefs. because it's home chefs and the social media chefs. So I'm learning about, listen, I don't have as many millions of followers on TikTok that some of our contestants have. My kids don't always like my food like some of our home cooks' families
Yeah.
do. I maybe don't have the experience of some of our pro chefs in certain restaurants that they've worked in. So to me, that's the joy of our industry, is that we're always learning, and I'm always learning from our, of course, my co-hosts, but also our cast.
The thing I've learned more and more every season is patience. I have to have an insurmountable amount of patience because I'm very results driven. I want things to happen now, and I trust the process and I'm here for it. But girl, patience is so imperative.
Was this Nyesha? I'm sorry to ask you the question, but was this an epiphany you had after you threw a flaming pan from the top level one season?
I'd have no idea what you're talking about. Richard, I was really saving the entire kitchen. That pan was about to burn down the entire set if it didn't go off board.
Respect.
She hadn't quite learnt patience just yet.
Yeah,
it was still in the process.
It's the proof that we're all learning constantly, Nyesha and myself included.
And I'm sure that cook learned not to put hollandaise with duck.